The Holy Gospel according to Matthew. In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem, asking, "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star at its rising and have come to pay him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all Jerusalem with him. And calling together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. They told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it has been written by the prophet, 'And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel.'" Then Herod secretly called for the Magi and learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared. Then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word so that I may also go and pay him homage." When they had heard the king, they set out, and there ahead of them went the star that they had seen at its rising, until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they knelt down and paid him homage. Then, opening their treasure chests, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their own country by another road. The Gospel of the Lord. Praise be to Christ. You may be seated. Like the 3 years before this, on this holiday for us, we spent 9 days, me more than my family, driving around the southeastern United States. And in the southeastern United States, everywhere are Chick-fil-A's, of course. I have a conflicted relationship with Chick-fil-A because of some of the contributions they made and things like that, and it's conflicted because also they're one of the only places where I can stop and get fast food with my food allergies and things. And so I was on my way to meet someone, my best friend, to drive to Charleston as she was moving there on this epic journey. And of course, we decided to meet where you meet in Atlanta, which is at a Chick-fil-A. So I went to the Chick-fil-A and I was by myself, I was waiting, and if you've been to one, you know that the lines are approximately 1 million people long. And so this line was triple and then out the door. I'm not making this up. But I had time. And so I thought, well, I guess I'll stand in line and get some chicken. And so I stood in line and I did, what you do when you're standing in line now, which was I pulled my phone out and I thought, I have some time. I have a sermon on Sunday. Wonder what the texts are. So I pulled out my phone and I was reading on Working Preacher, actually. And so I'm reading, and Working Preacher is this website that obviously it helps preachers. So I was really into it. It was a really good article. The line is moving slowly, and I'm thinking, I could write a whole sermon in this line, and that would be super great. And I heard someone say, "Is there good news on there?" And I was like, I don't know anybody in here. What's happening? And so I looked up, and there's a man standing next to me in the line that was tripled and doubled, and he said, "Is there good news on there?" Talking about what I was reading. And I thought about it for a second because I was reading these texts in Working Preacher, and I said, well, it depends on who you think the good news is for. And he looked at me weird and he just said, "I'm sorry," and he moved right along. But I kept thinking about it. Is this good news? It depends, right? It depends who this is for. The story of the Magi and King Herod and Mary and the Holy Family. Is there good news in here? That was a really good question, even though that guy probably went home, Chick-fil-A man, and said, I really I saw this woman and I said, is there good news? Because he probably thought I was reading the news, in which case, no, totally not. Is there good news in this Epiphany story? It depends. It depends on who it's for. For King Herod, is this good news? No, decidedly not. This is not good news for King Herod. If you hear what he does when he hears this news that a king of the Jews has been born, he himself is a king of the Jews. That's not cool when you hear that someone might replace you, and especially not when you're someone who enjoys your position of power and authority. You hear that there's another king of the Jews, and that is not good news for you. And so he gathers his people together, and it actually says that he was frightened, and all Jerusalem with him. But I feel like he was leading the way for that, because really, was all Jerusalem frightened? Anyway, King Herod called together all the right people. He called together the chief priests and the scribes and the Pharisees, all the people that would know the things. He called them all together, and he said, okay, where is the Messiah going to be born? And as a Jew, he should have been excited about this. This should have been good news for him. But it was not, because he had the authority and the power. They told him Bethlehem, and then he calls the Magi together and says, so can you do me a favor? When you find where he's born, come back and tell me, because I totally want to worship him too. No. And the Magi, and I'll talk about them in a minute, the Magi, they get a bad vibe from King Herod. But they go, and they find the baby. For King Herod, this was not good news. For the Holy Family, I wonder if this is good news. We have a couple representations of the Holy Family, and I talked about on Christmas Eve, we have some really wonderful modern representations of the Holy Family. People with different skin colors and different life situations, some pretty desperate, like desperate enough to have your baby in a stable. The Holy Family must have been confused by this news. Imagine you have your toddler with you because, it took the Magi 4 or 5 months at least to get from what was modern-day Iran. Yes, the Magi were from Iran, ripped from the headlines, and they made their way to Bethlehem. It took them months, and so Jesus was older. And imagine you're Mary, the mother, and these strange people, yet again, I'll talk about them in a minute, these strange people come in, and by pay them homage, they laid down, they prostrated themselves in front of the baby. So babies are really cute, but can you imagine if someone came to see your baby and they just laid straight down on the floor and worshiped him? What? It would be confusing news, I think, for the Holy Family. Is this good news? Is this bad news? Is this odd news? We know that Mary was a deep thinker, and so I'm sure she took all of this news and thought about it really carefully and pondered it. But I don't know what kind of news this was for them. But the thing we know for sure is that this was great news for the Magi. I call them the Magi because here's where I ruin Epiphany for everybody. They were neither 3 nor wise nor men. Sorry. They were the Magi. And the word Magi is only spoken of in derogatory terms. Magi they weren't even astronomers, they were astrologers. They were the people that if it was now, they would post, I'm having a bad day, but I'm a Libra. I have a lot of Libras in my life. This happened, but it's totally because he's a Pisces. Those people. You know those people that sell essential oils and think that they cure everything? Guess what frankincense and myrrh are? If you talk to anyone who sells essential oils, they will tell you that frankincense, which you can buy now, is the most expensive essential oil that you can buy. The Magi were the weird, hippie yoga people, astrologers. And these people were so excited that this king had been born. They don't care that he's a baby. They don't care that he was born in a barn. They just see a star and they feel a vibe deep in their intuition. You know these people. Sometimes I'm one of these people that are like, I had a feeling that it was all going to work out. And so that feeling takes them about 1,000 miles across on this journey. And when they see the child, they lay themselves down, and because I have to leave you with some Greek, there were 4 Greek words that all point to joy. They were overwhelmed, joyfully, with joy, exceedingly, greatly. They were really, really excited. This was good news for the Magi. But what about us? What about our world? Is this story good news for our world that is burning in Australia? Wars happening, maybe, and rumors of wars? Is this story good news for our world? Is this story good news for us? Well, like I told Chick-fil-A man, it all depends. If you're a person who really likes having power and authority, a person who is comfortable on a throne being in charge of people, a person who really loves being right and hanging out with all the right people, this story is real bad news for you. But if you're a person who lives on the margins, who maybe is a weird hippie yoga person who listens to their dreams and follows the stars, if you're someone who lives on the margins, who is poor, who is needy, this is really good news for you. That God has come to earth in such a strange way, in such a humble way, and in such a way that the weirdos are the ones who recognize that the king is born. The good news is the gospel is always both. The gospel is always both good news and bad news and strange news and news that we have to ponder like Mary. One of the things that I have always tried to do my whole career and here with you at Holy Cross is preach the gospel. And the gospel is not always good news. The gospel always afflicts the comfortable and comforts the afflicted. And we know that we might be both or either or on any given day. But preaching the gospel means we hear the news of a story of reversal. Death turning into life. The people on the outside being beloved and recognizing God in their midst. It's always a reversal, this gospel. So I don't know if it's good news for you. Some days it might be, some days it might not be. But what I want to urge you to do is to figure that out for yourself. Is to think, what is the gospel to me? What is good news to me? And then your call is to share it with the world. Amen.